Hey guys, Chairman here with a bit of a special video. So 1 week ago, roughly, Carson released this very long deck guide for dual laner Pah-Chin. So Carson, if you guys don't know, he won, I believe, Toronto Regionals last year with this deck. And so yeah, he qualified for Worlds last year with dual laner TRV, which is really cool. And I guess he had the time to write I think on Google Docs, this was like a 32-page deck guide. I don't even know. It's very comprehensive deck guide. And, you know, as the inventor of dual laners Pah-Chin, I felt like it would be pretty good content for me to kind of review his guide and kind of give my feedback and comments. So a bit of a history lesson of why I call myself the inventor of dual laner Pah-Chin. So basically, Japan got Tokyo Revengers in May of 2022. Which was about 2 months before the US got it. And we got ours in July 29th, 2022, right before the Bushiroad Rumble Online series of events, which were online tournaments. And basically, starting from the start of July, which was like a month before the set came out in English, a group of SoCal people had brainstormed together an idea to use the dual laners to get a bajillion stock and use all that stock on Baji plus Mikey and Mitsuya to go for like a very big finishing turn. And so that initial idea was not my idea. It was a bunch of other SoCal guys. And then I joined that group to kind of refine the idea and to refine lists and refine strategies. So I was part of like that think tank. And supposedly other regions also had some people brewing this, but Japan notably did not have any lists come out between May and July during this time period where they had the set and we didn't. No lists from Japan came out using this strategy, and no lists from other regions came out using this strategy either. At BRO 2022, which was, I believe, start of August, there were 3 events, and the main people who took these lists to these events were SoCal people. So I placed top 8 at one of the events with dual laner. This was just a pure dual laner strategy at the time. And yeah, so I was part of the initial group of people to kind of brainstorm out dual laner technology and prove it in like an official capacity, right? And then afterwards, a bunch of people were trying to claim that they had figured it out before, but they just didn't want to reveal the list. I mean, you gotta put it out there in order for you to claim it, right? So that was dual laners, but then, you know, pretty soon dual laners was, you know, you could figure out counters to it. It didn't play very well into decks like Kanta Marine at the time, and like it would also lose to Quince because like Nino Standby was really strong. So Japan came up with the idea of a Pah-Chin deck, which was just 8 door triggers, empty door triggers, to turbo out the Pah-Chin as fast as possible. And unfortunately, that deck idea was not replicable at the time in English because we had no universal door triggers. And so, you know, some people tried, but it ultimately wasn't very good because that deck really depended on door triggers to get advantage, and without the door triggers, you just had no selectivity. However, after I got top 8 with dual laners, I started iterating on the idea of adding the Pah-Chin package into dual laners and using the stock generated from dual laners to basically fund the Pah-Chin in game states where you want to go for Pah-Chin instead, which was very specific matchups like Kanta Marine, like standby decks, where I think Pah-Chin would just like win out. And I took that list to BCS Anaheim 2022, and that's where I got second at the regionals, qualifying for Worlds that year, which was my first and only Worlds qualification up until basically last week when I qualified again. But yeah, that was the first time that list, Dual Laner Pah-Chin, had ever been played and performed. I did make like YouTube videos before, like teasing the idea of like the deck and like showing off like my local success, but basically, yeah, that was like the first time anybody like took that list to do anything with it. So nobody in Japan ever played that before then. Afterwards, I believe there were some dual laner lists, but generally, I don't think Japan liked that strategy that much. I didn't see it like pick up or anything, but yeah, I was the first one to do it, so I really do consider myself to be the inventor of it. Also, like crashed the market for Tokyo Revenger at the time. Yeah, got some like rares to like $20 on TCG Player. That was really fun. So I feel pretty qualified to talk about this list, but I haven't been playing this deck a lot recently because you know, I've just been moving on playing other stuff. But it's really cool to see Carson do really well with this deck. This is it's like a 3-year-old deck, but you know, still topping an event with it is like really impressive. So So I have read the entire guide. And like actually fully read the entire guide. So I'm going to talk about the things that I really agree with, I really like that he has put into this guide. And then I'll talk about some of the things that I would probably not 100% agree with, or I would kind of like push back a little bit on in my personal experience with the deck. So let's start with the pros here. So, I mean, this is a very, very detailed like strategy guide. He has a lot of like the intricacies. Basically, a lot of the stuff that I have covered in my videos, he has like talked about in this, but even to like a much further detail. He's like really gone in like the nitty gritty and like really fleshed out some of the ideas. So it's really worth a read, especially if you want to try playing this deck. This is probably like the golden document for learning the deck. But the first thing that I would like to talk about, he does high priority brainstorms. I believe his current list is on 4 brainstorms. I used to only play 2. I do think that's a mistake. So in a recent list, I've been playing 3. I think 3 is a good number. I would think 3 or 4 is really good. The early mill is really important. All right, this is a big one. So I never played Self Bouncer. And after reading this document and seeing what he was doing with the Bouncer in conjunction with like being able to brainstorm and then tap the Mitsuya and Bouncer to get the filter, I was like, why had I not thought about this before? Like, this makes so much sense. It gives you extra power, extra soul, allows you to filter without losing cards. It basically makes your climax is like pseudo +1. You don't have to lose cards in order to get the cards that you want. It's like so genius. Like, of course you should play Bouncer. So I tested this at 2. It was a fantastic card. I loved it every time. It does have really diminishing turns because like once you get the 1, the second one is really bad. So like I think 2 is still good though because you really want to get the first one, and then the second one you can just like stalk away with the Chifuyu. But yeah, amazing card. 100% like this is so correct that you should be playing the Bouncer. Because I wasn't playing the Bouncer before, there was actually a period of time where I thought about even cutting the Mitsuya because I was just like, wow, this Mitsuya is like so bad if I want to brainstorm, and I want to brainstorm all the time. So like I can't really, I feel like I'm not using this Mitsuya very well. But the Bouncer basically saves the Mitsuya and makes the Mitsuya actually like really, really good still. And so definitely this is like probably the biggest takeaway for me personally from this was that like, yeah, I should be playing Bouncer. So I actually went and bought Bouncers after this. So yeah, very good. All right, the next one is the stock swap. So in my list at the time, I wasn't playing stock swap because I didn't think that stock swap was necessary in the meta, because the decks that could get stock compression was specifically Kanta Marine. And against Kanta Marine, you go Pah-Chin to win the game. And you really don't try to kill, you just go Pah-Chin, like wall them off, hit them to 3, try like hopefully live, and then just kill them from there. So like stock swap was not very necessary. Nowadays, stock swap is 100% necessary. In fact, there was some later list I was testing where you would run 1 standby and then try to standby out the stock swap at level 2 in order to have like access to the stock swap like on the field before level 3. But obviously the standby is not, it's like a pretty gimmicky thing, but I definitely would still play stock swap in the list. Yeah, so I've added it after like my 2022 lists. All right, and then the last thing I want to talk about that I think is really good about his article is like the cards not played section. I basically agree with all the cards here, and it's really funny because he does talk a lot about the check 4 Baji, My Treasure Baji, and he criticizes it as like a really bad card. And this card was one of the cards that I played a lot of at the start, especially in the pure dual laner build. I do think it's actually not the worst card because it is a main phase way to mill. Even though it does cost 1 stock, it allows you to mill, like during main phase you have a lot of control, and it is a lot of mill, it's like mill 4. But generally speaking, you would just rather brainstorm, and then in the dual laner Pah-Chin list, you just don't have like either the room or the resources to use this card. So I do like how he has addressed a bunch of these other options that are like, you could play them and it won't kill your deck, but definitely like his reasonings for not playing it is really, really good. So again, really cool to see like thoughts. Like even some of these cards, like the 4K beater, I've considered because like the level 0 of this deck is really weak, and so you do kind of want to have some like bigger bodies, but again, there's like a lot of reasons for why you wouldn't want to play it, and you just don't have the space and stuff like that. So really good thoughts overall, all throughout this article. All right, but this wouldn't be a very fun video if it was all just me agreeing with Carson's, labor of love here. So I do want to push back on a few things. So the first thing I want to talk about is he is on 2 Mighty 4 Mitsuya, and he talks about how Mitsuya is just a way better finisher or off finisher piece because the stats, the math shows that you, on average, you burn more with the Mitsuya, or you do more damage with the Mitsuya. So it's better at range, just for better damage numbers. I agree, and he does talk about like the caveats where like obviously like the Mikey burn is better if your opponent's already at level 3. Mitsuya burn is better at range, and you can also like set up the Mitsuya by like shuffling back cards to make sure that your mills are like really good. But the problem with Mitsuya, in my experience, there's two big issues. The first issue is that Mitsuya is random. At the end of the day, it is still random, and there are situations where if you mill clean, like you would have won if you had just milled one soul trigger, and the Mikey gives you the like the guaranteed instance of damage over like the damage amount. Like there's some game states where like you don't actually care about how much damage you're doing, you care about how many instances of damage that you can do, because your opponent has so many climaxes to cancel instances with, right? And so yeah, in those game states, like the damage number doesn't matter, and it's really the damage instance, and that's where Mikey is better. The second thing about Mitsuya is that like because Mitsuya is main phase and Mikey is like later, you can like course correct with Mitsuya, or sorry, you can course correct with Mikey in a way that you cannot course correct if you don't have access to Mikey. Let's say you know how many soul triggers are left in your deck, you play your Mitsuya, you mill 2, you like mill all your soul triggers, and now you're like, oh shoot, I actually don't have soul triggers left in my deck now. If I play more Mitsuyas, I'm actually going to lose out on damage because I know I'm going to be milling clean. Like that's a really great time to just course correct into Mikeys and play Mikeys for the guaranteed burn one, because you know like the rest of your deck has no soul triggers. However, if you're like too indexed on Mitsuyas, you can't like go back towards Mikeys, especially if you've stocked one Mikey, and then if you're only playing 2 Mikeys, like the second Mikey is just not going to be very easily accessible. So that's why I don't really like going all in on Mitsuya. I like having a more even split of Mitsuya and Mikey, because sometimes it's good to like start with the Mitsuyas, and then once you have like burned a lot of damage and they're already at level 3, that's when you like pivot to the Mikeys, because the Mikeys are way better if your opponent's already at 3 and you're just trying to do like very precise instances of damage rather than like a large damage amount. The second thing, which he does talk about in this Mikey section, is the fact that because Mikey can put a card underneath him to the bottom of your deck, you can set up like your triggers, which is really, really good, especially if you need a side all your opponent's lanes. You can like play Mikey, put a soul trigger underneath Mikey, and then attack with the Mikey, burn 1, put the soul trigger underneath your deck, and now you know you're going to be able to trigger that soul trigger like if you get to it. And that's really good if your opponent's all on level 3s and they have like memory counter in hand or something, then you can just like guarantee like burn 1, side 1, burn 1, side 1, like all your attacks, right? And you just don't get access to that if you're not running enough Mikeys. So like that's why I do think like 3 Mikey, 3 Mitsuya is probably like the best number, because you get a bit of both worlds. Like you can still play all the Mitsuyas and like loot the Mitsuyas and clone the Mitsuyas and stuff like that, but you have enough Mikeys so that it's probably feasible to be holding one and have one in stock as well, so that if you need to pivot to the Mikey, or if you need to like play a Mikey, clone the Mikey, then you can do that as well, right? So I personally would recommend like a more even split and not just go all in on Mitsuya. Personally, I get burned a lot on the Mitsuya mills because like it's just so random, and like yeah, I like lower numbers that are like more consistent personally in my. All right, the second thing I want to push back on is he has cut the Takemichi stock Riki or whatever this like the stock generator card from his list, and this seems really weird to me because this card is like so important. Like I tried cutting it and I was like, oh, that's just such a bad idea, because this card is like so important to the way the deck is played and has like access to, because okay, so first of all, let's get the minor thing out of the way. It's like this deck is really weak at level 0, especially going second. So if your opponent opens with like a runner or like a 3/5 runner or any big body, and you go second, you basically have no way of answering that card, so you're just gonna give your opponent a free +1 that they can use to like build advantage, right? But the cool thing with Takemichi is if you're going second, you open this card, you just get to kill whatever their turn 1 play is, and like now they have to like find other zeros, which is like that's great for us, right? Like we want our opponent to not just be in control of the game from like their first turn because of how slow we take to get started. So Takemichi is like a great going second play. But more importantly is the ability to get the stock and clock yourself is just like so instrumental to the deck, because like this deck needs to hit levels at the right time, like really, really consistently. Basically, it needs to hit level 1 as soon as possible, and then it needs to be able to hit level 3 like on demand. And both of those like timings, like you just don't have a lot of leeway to mess around with those timings, right? And especially at level 0, because like our ways of clocking ourselves is like Riki, we have the top 5 Mikey, and then if you're running this Takemichi, we have this Takemichi, right? So the Riki requires stock. So if we don't have stock, we can't use the Riki. The top 5 Takemichi is not a plus. Like we have the clock from hand and we have the top 5. And when we clock from hand, it has to be a revenge character. It can't be a climax. So if our hand is already cards that we want to be playing, and we have to level ourselves up or clock ourselves up with the Takemichi, we might have to lose a card that we want in hand. This Takemichi is the only way to clock ourselves that doesn't require stock and doesn't require us to like lose another card from our hand. And not only that, it actually gives us a stock. So it gives us a stock to use for some other effect while clocking ourselves. And so that's like really, really important, especially at level 0 to 1, that transition where we have so few resources and basically every little thing we can do in that short window like matters a lot. Just the ability to clock ourselves without using stock and or hand is like super, super important. The second thing is, and he talks about this, and I do think it's kind of weird that he doesn't think it's a good play, but basically he talks about doing the Takemichi Riki play on turn 1. So it's where you start on turn 1, you have no stock, you play this Takemichi, you clock yourself, get a stock, and then you play a Riki, use that stock immediately to search like a piece, and this way you clock yourself twice. And he says he talks, I don't know if it's right here or somewhere else, he says he doesn't like it because it's like he takes too much damage or whatever, right? And in other places he actually talks about like he doesn't try to hit level 1 as soon as possible. Like if he stays at 0 for an extra turn, he'll play a level 0 game, which that's so weird to me, because when I was playing this deck, and the kind of like the consensus that I had with other players at the time was that you just want to turbo yourself to 1 as soon as possible. And the way I would do it is, if I'm going first and I open Takemichi Riki, I would Takemichi, clock myself, get a stock, Riki for like a Chifuyu or a Brainstorm, pay it out, and then I would actually leave both of the units in the front row and just attack once. And what this was doing is like, so if you do that, which is it's a crazy play by the way, but if you do this, you're at 0-3 and then you've attacked once. So hopefully your opponent either canceled it or they took 2, right? So they'll be at like 0-2. So they clock up to 0-3, right? And then now they have to answer your 2 bodies. So you have like 2 level 0s in the front row. So in order for them to answer both bodies, they have to play at least 2 characters. If they only play 1 character, it means that they let you keep one of those characters, in which case you just got a +1, that's fine, right? So let's assume that they have to play at least 2 characters. If they play 2 characters and they just swing 1-1, we hit 0-5. But now we have 1 stock. So on the following turn, we can clock ourselves to 0-6, and then we can either use a Takemichi, a Mikey, or a Riki to hit ourselves to level 1. And then once we're level 1, we can dual lane. And when we dual lane, they have 2 bodies on their board that we can attack into. And so we can just attack into those bodies, hopefully for like 1-1. And then if they cancel or if they just take the 1-1, then they're at 0-5. And they need a Riki to hit themselves to level 1. If they can't hit level 1, they can't answer our 7k dual laners. And we just get a free turn of like having the Chifuyus on the board uncontested. And so we don't have to use hand or like resources to replace them, right? And that kind of play can only happen if we have all these cards in our deck that can clock ourselves to hit us up to level 1 basically as soon as possible. Like I want to spend 1 turn at level 0, and then the next turn of the game I want to be dual laning, because every turn of dual laning is like so many resources for this deck, right? And Takemichi is like basically the most like the best way to do that, because of it just gets you the stock that you can use for that Riki immediately, or for like a Brainstorm to mill out or whatever. And the second thing is also, he talks about it in the Riki section. Okay, yeah, he talks it down here. He calls it the Riki glitch. But basically, it's using the Hinata Riki to shuffle back extra copies of the Riki into the deck to search them out in order to like chain clock yourself up. But the thing is, this play is really bad if you cannot do this. So he talks about this, where like the last one can search the Takemichi to get yourself like the stock back. That's super strong, because like again, like you're doing this to to like go hand neutral, but you're using a lot of stock. And like the last one, like if you don't need the hand, but you need the stock, then like having at least one copy of the Takemichi gives you the ability to get that stock back instead of like getting another Riki that, or like another zero that you don't need. But if you don't run the Takemichi, then you just don't have that opportunity, right? So it's kind of crazy that he would talk about this strategy, but like not have like a card that effectively makes that strategy even viable by making it so that you don't actually lose a stock for doing that play, right? So I think this card, because of that reason, because of the reason like you can use the Rikis to shuffle back to like level yourself up, I think this should always be a one of, because like worst case scenario, if you have one and it's like in your waiting room, you can shuffle it back and then use the Riki to search it, and then you can, you know, level yourself that way without using stock. So I think it should always be a one. Personally, I think 2 or 3 is like the right number, because you also want it like going second to answer your opponent's turn 1 play, and like if you lose one, you still have like another copy somewhere to play it. I've played this at 4 and I felt like it was a perfectly great card at 4. So regardless, I do think this card is really important. I think it is interesting that he doesn't value it that highly, and I wonder if it is like a playstyle issue, or if it's like not issue, sorry. I wonder if it's like a playstyle difference, or if like it's a matchup issue where there's certain matchups where like this card is just not very good. But I do think that this card is really important in my experience, yeah, of playing this card. Okay, but the one thing I really want to push back on, and this is something where I actually just like, I think this is so wrong, and maybe because this exists, maybe that's why the Takemichi stock Riki, it doesn't seem as attractive. But so Carson really likes the Baji on reverse Rize, and oh man, how do I say this? I think the only reason why this card could potentially even be good is if your opponents don't know how to play into your deck. I think if your opponents knows how to play against dual laners, this card is the worst card in your deck. All right, here's why. So if you go second with this card, you're playing this card down. It's a 1500 attacker. It cannot kill anything really. So it's going to attack like a direct lane probably, or whatever. And then your opponent can just side this, right? Like on your opponent's turn 2, unless they need to get a reverse, they could just side this card, and then you do the card is useless for you, because if you go second, you attack with this, and then your opponent sides it, and then on your turn you're level 1. You're dual laning now. Like you're not gonna attack with the Baji again. You're not even gonna crash with the Baji. You can't. You have to dual lane. So you move this to the back. I guess it just sits in your back for a while, but eventually you're gonna be playing Mitsuya and brainstorming your back row. So you just play over the Baji. So it literally does nothing, right? If you go second. If you go first, this is the only time where like maybe if you go first, you attack with this going first, your opponent's like, well, we probably should reverse that because otherwise he gets a +1. But honestly, if your opponent is actually smart, they would just side again, because like it doesn't actually matter if they give you pluses at 0 if they can deny you the hand filter and the mill, right? Because then the card is just a nothing card. It's just like a level 0 vanilla that can't kill anything, and eventually that you're gonna have to play over it for dual laner, right? Like think about how many games where you're just playing like a normal level 1 climax combo and your opponent like leaves zeros on your board and you just play over them anyways because you just rather play better cards. That problem is much more exacerbated in dual laners, because not only do we have better cards to play at level 1, which are the Chifuyus, we have to have a spot on the board empty. So like we're constantly playing over stuff because we can only attack twice in the front row and our back row is like very fixed, right? This is one of the reasons why when I do the Takemichi Riki play, I just leave the Riki in the front row, is because even if I move it to the back row, I'm going to be playing over it eventually anyway. So might as well leave it in the front row and force my opponent to like have to like reverse it or like play a character in that lane to like attack it, right? And it like blocks 1 damage from you or something. But yeah, so I mean, I think as long as your opponent knows to side this Baji, you basically get 0 value of the Baji. Like maybe if they side the Baji and then you like crash, with the Baji on your following turn, that's assuming that like there's a good target to crash into and that you don't have other things that you want to do. Like if, like let's say you go first, you attack with this, and then they tri-field you, and then they side the Baji, and they hit you level 1. Are you crashing with this Baji? Like maybe if you're not set up, like you're crashing with the Baji, but like it's just so bad. Like this card is so bad if your opponent just sides it the entire time, right? Because then you have to crash it in order to get any value out of it, and that's just really bad. But I think that most people just aren't smart enough to side this, which is why I think if you don't side this card, it's really good. If like they reverse it, you just get the free filter or whatever. But I think the moment some person realizes that they can just side this forever and you just get no value is the moment this card is like the worst card in the deck. So personally, I would not play this because I do know a lot of people in my locals will figure that out very quickly and just start siding me to oblivion, and like I'm just not gonna get any value out of this. So I think if this card is like super abused, or not abused, exploitable like that, I think that's why like the Takemichi is like way better, because like this card cannot be exploited, and this card kind of like gives us a lot more control with the deck, whereas this card, like it's really up to our opponents whether or not they're kind enough to give us the reverse, really, because like crashing with this card is just like very, very bad. So that's like the big one I would push back on. Once people get smart and they side this card, I do not think this card is worth playing. But otherwise, everything else about his lists, like you can see his winning list up here, and also his like more recent list with like some of the changes. I do think these lists are all really refined and really showcases like a high understanding and mastery of the deck. And I mean, obviously this whole article is just like really well written. So if you're interested in picking up Dueling or Pah-Chin, I would highly suggest you guys read this article, give it a read. Probably not read the whole thing because it was very, very long, but like any sections that you kind of feel like you need some more help or some more insight on, just go ahead and read those sections. But yeah, this was a fun review to do. Yeah, so you can go check this out. There is a Google Doc, and then there is this website, which is basically they posted it on Weiss Tea Time. And I think if I would recommend just reading on the website because it's going to give the website more traffic. Either way, it's like his article, and like you might as well give the website more traffic for the website purposes. Like giving a Google Doc more traffic doesn't do anything, right? But yeah, that's it for this video. Yeah, huge shout out to Carson for writing really good article. I mean, we want more Weiss content like this. You know, I want more articles. Unfortunately, I don't have time to write a lot these days. But like, yeah, I would love to see more stuff like this come out of the community. So this is really exciting. But yeah, all right, that's it for me. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.